My launch day PS5 Pro has arrived, and I'm excited to give you guys my first real and honest impressions of it, so you can decide if it's a worthwhile addition to your gaming setup, especially because it's not cheap. So, let's get right into it. The PS5 Pro is currently the most powerful gaming console on the market, and an upgrade from the original PS5 model and the updated Slim version. Some of the key upgrades of the Pro are the PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution, or PSSR. It's basically Sony's version of an AI upscaler to get lower resolution games to reach that nice and crisp 4K that we've all come to expect out of the latest generation of consoles and PCs. Another big feature is giving us higher frame rates while maintaining the highest quality graphic settings. As you all know, games this generation usually have 2 or 3 options on consoles. A high quality mode that runs at 30 frames per second, usually at 4K, a performance mode that runs at 60 frames per second, but at a slightly lower graphic quality and resolution, and some games even allow for up to 120 frames per second, also at the cost of lowering the resolution and graphic settings. The PS5 Pro claims to mostly solve that problem, so you won't always have to choose between these options. And last, the extra horsepower in the GPU allows for games to have more advanced ray tracing features that are normally reserved for high-end gaming PCs. This means more realistic reflections, shadows, and global illumination in your games. And Sony claims they will also be able to hit 8K resolution with some games. Moving on to the box, it isn't very large at all. On the side, it also calls out that the console comes with 2 TB of storage, which is double the storage that the Slim model comes with, which is nice. But one thing that does catch my eye though, is this icon stating that this is a disc-free console, but more on that later. Let's unbox this thing. Inside the box, you get the typical paperwork like your setup instructions and warranty booklet, the power cable, a high-definition HDMI cable, a couple of plastic little legs, a standard DualSense wireless controller with its USB-C charging cable, and the console itself. If you were a fan of the original console design and current Slim design, which I personally am, you're going to love the new one, as it hasn't really done anything that much different. But it does have these 3 pretty cool black vents on the sides and in between the 4 removable panels. I'd say a lot of the design just feels a bit more refined when compared to the Slim model. A lot of the nice little details from before are still here, as well as the vents on the inside that seem to be back now, since they were removed from the Slim model. And here it is next to the original PS5, so you can see the difference in size and design. You can tell it's just a little bit shorter, but way thinner. Moving on to the front of the Pro, you have the power button and 2 USB-C ports. And on the back, you have the HDMI 2.1 port, a LAN Ethernet port, 2 USB ports, and the power port. So pretty much the same ports as the Slim model, but different from the base PS5. Now, you can see I'm standing it vertically right now, which is not recommended without the stand that's sold separately for another $30. But I didn't buy one. Looks like you still can, but you'll want to be careful around it so that it doesn't get knocked over. And if we attach those clear plastic legs in these holes under the new vents, you can lay the console horizontally. They do the job fine, but it does seem to be able to tip a little. I'm sure adding the disk drive would probably add more stability, but that would be another $80 I'd have to spend. Now, let's set this bad boy up and try out some games to see if I notice a difference. I'll fire up the same games on both the base console and the Pro. After, I'll give you guys my quick thoughts on whether I think it's worth the upgrade. Keep in mind that the video is in 4K and 30 frames a second, plus it's being compressed by YouTube, so you're not going to be able to see exactly what I'm seeing. I'll do my best to describe everything I'm seeing and the differences I'm noticing. First up is Resident Evil 4 Remake on the base PS5. In the options, we have the frame rate mode that targets 60 frames per second but without ray tracing, and resolution mode, which prioritizes a higher resolution with ray tracing turned on, but at the cost of frame rate, which is what I'm going to choose. And man, this is a great looking game, Everything is nice and sharp and it looks to be hitting 4K. But the frame rate is probably at around 30 frames per second, and I can tell when I input the different commands on the controller. On the PS5 Pro, you'll notice I have a new option under ray tracing called High Frame Rate Mode. This should keep the high resolution quality of the base PS5 while keeping the ray tracing and give me a higher frame rate of 60 frames per second. And yeah, I can feel the difference right away. Everything is running much smoother and the input delay from the controller is pretty much gone. I can't wait to get back to finishing this one now. Up next is Lies of P. On the base PS5, you have a quality-centered option that prioritizes graphics quality and a performance-centered option that targets higher frame rates. I went with quality-centered, which should have the best graphics settings and resolution quality, but run at 30 FPS. And yeah, this is not the way to play a Souls-like game. It just looks and feels so choppy, especially on this one. At least it looks really good though, so I'll give it that. On the PS5 Pro, you'll notice that if you select the graphics-centered option, we can now enable the high frame rate mode. Loading it up, I can notice and feel the difference right away. There is no input delay, while the graphics settings seem to have stayed the same. Once I heard that this game was going to be enhanced for the PS5 Pro, I knew I had to hold off a little longer before playing it. Now I'm ready. Now we have Alan Wake 2 on the base PS5. There are only two settings for you to choose from, quality and performance. We're going to be doing quality like the others. This is also a great looking game that I'm pretty sure is running at 30 FPS at 4K or close to it. But on this subway train I noticed some strange artifacting happening. They look like flickering white specks. And the puddles don't seem to have actual ray trace reflections. Which makes sense since real ray tracing doesn't come on this game on the base PS5. Now, on the PS5 Pro there actually isn't any difference to what the two menu options are called or say. But on the Pro there is supposed to be real ray tracing now. So as I make my way back to the subway car, you can see that the weird artifacting is now gone, which is nice. And if I start looking at the reflections in the puddles, they are much more accurate and realistic. One thing to note though, I'm pretty sure this is still running at 30 frames per second or close to it. Maybe the ray tracing is too much for the console to handle on this one. Either way, excited to be able to finish this game up with ray tracing on the Pro now. Last in these handful of games I'm trying out is Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. On the base PS5, in the menu system, you have Performance Ray Tracing mode that targets 60 FPS while keeping a lower setting of ray tracing. Then you have regular performance mode that removes the ray tracing but runs the smoothest. And fidelity mode, which has all the bells and whistles turned on but runs at 30 FPS. Since I want 4K, like the others, we're going to go with fidelity mode. Now, I already beat this game, but seeing it again reminds me of what a great looking game it is. It looks like a Pixar movie. Everything looks amazing, of course, but like the other games, it feels choppy after having experienced 60 FPS, especially when you input commands on the controller. Moving on to the PS5 Pro, we now have Performance Pro mode, which is supposed to be the highest quality graphics and ray tracing the base model was able to do, but at 60 FPS. And then we also have Fidelity Pro mode, which adds new and enhanced ray tracing and individual graphics settings you can tweak further to enhance your frame rate. But it starts at 30 FPS with everything turned on. I'm going to start with the Performance Pro mode. Right away, it feels and runs as awesome as I would expect. but I think the difference I'm really noticing here is the smoother animations overall on the NPCs and my character. The resolution also seems to be at 4K as well, because I don't think I've lost any sharpness from what I can tell. Now, on the Fidelity Pro mode, you can see those extra ray tracing options they were talking about. We're going to keep them all on high. I can feel the frame rate drop to 30 FPS for sure, but the reflections on everything, especially the reflective ground, have way more detail in them. This is a great game to showcase that, since you have so many reflective materials in the environment and characters. Obviously, these are my non-technical impressions, but if you do want the deep dive on what the PS5 Pro graphics settings are actually doing, I'd check out Digital Foundry's YouTube channel. Those guys are the best at that stuff. So, that was fun and I'm dying to get back to playing. But let's get into if I think the PS5 Pro is worth it. We'll start with the elephant in the room, and probably the most important factor for a lot of people: the price. This thing costs $700, which is crazy expensive when you compare it to the normal slim version, which you can get for $500, or a refurbished base model from the Sony website for only $400. Now, I'll be the first to admit that I'm a huge Sony fanboy, and have been ever since the first PlayStation. But I can't ignore that I do feel some kind of way about what I paid for and what I got. And that seems to be the sentiment about the PS5 Pro from part of the gaming community. If you want the Pro console, plus the stand, and the disc drive, that comes out at over $810, not including tax. I feel like if they had included these accessories with the console, along with an Edge Pro controller instead of a normal one, and if there was a new game launching that really took advantage of all the new horsepower, people might be willing to overlook the price and be way more excited. All of these consoles will play the exact same games. They just won't have that extra bit of power that makes these games run and look better. But I wouldn't say it's as groundbreaking as something like the PS4 Pro was when we went from 1080p to 4K resolution. The Pro is also supposed to be capable of producing 8K video and screenshots, like in Gran Turismo. But how many of you guys have an 8K TV or monitor? Now, for those of you that want the best of the best in resolution, frame rates, GPU horsepower, and you have a TV that is capable of showing all that, and you have the money for it, I'd say go for it. You'll be future-proofing yourself by buying the PS5 Pro. This is currently the most powerful gaming console on the market, and I know we'll be seeing its true potential as newer games come out. I personally am excited for what the future holds and will be enjoying my PS5 Pro thoroughly, but my wallet does need a little bit of time to recover. Are you guys getting one, or are you waiting it out until the PS6 or Grand Theft Auto 6 come out? I hope this video was helpful, and if you thought so, please do me a favor by liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and leaving a comment down below. And if you want to check out my ultimate all-black dream desk setup that I just built, check out this next video here.